All right. Hope everyone's doing well. Can you hear me in Lubbock and Plainview?
Yes, now we can. We had
Oh,
another setting up.
okay. All right. Very good. In Lubbock, I'm just seeing the table. I need to check on it. Y'all bear with me for just a moment. I was checking on Lubbock. We'll try to get that set. Now, I want to give you my little pep talk, okay? Uh, I realize that some of you uh, know how to study. You're great students. Some of you are just figuring it out. Some of you are overwhelmed by college. Depends on the number of hours you're taking. You're trying to work and have a life, social life or whatever. So forgive me if my dad was in the Army. He was in Korea. He was an infantryman, was wounded in Korea, in the Korean War. And I appreciate his service, everyone's service. But he said, you know, the one thing about the Army that I've figured out pretty quick is they tell you what they're going to tell you, and then they tell you, and then they tell you what they told you. I sort of do that. So if you don't do well on the test, I don't believe it's my fault, okay? Because I've explained it very well, I believe. Plus, I'm giving you the study guides, and you have those available online. You have the lectures, recordings there. So give it what it takes, what you need for your success. And if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer questions or help you in class. Or some of you send me emails. You have the opportunities to do well. And if you're here and you hear the material in class, you watch the lectures. If you miss, you study the study guides ahead of time, not the day of the test, you will do well. But this next test is going to hit you maybe if you're not prepared for it, because it's going to be the full thing, all this material crammed into that one test. So 20 questions instead of 10 and 10. And so don't be caught unaware. Okay, so I've prepared you, and you prepared yourself. That's the most important thing. Those of you that are taking notes and paying attention, you're not getting distracted or drowsy or letting your mind wander or whatever, you're learning to become a good student. I didn't know how to study when I went to college, and I made a D in a class that I didn't think I should make a D in, but I deserved it because I just wasn't putting the time in. And I never failed a class, but people fail my class. It puzzles me, but yet it doesn't either. So I want to urge you to do your best and stick with me on this. I'm going to show you one thing. Let's see if I can switch cameras here to this. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm very tired, but I'm glad to be here. We've been working very hard on the mosaic, and I've slept pretty well, but my old body is sore and tired, but I'm up to the task. So I will keep y'all. I will post you pretty soon and show you the things that we've been doing with the mosaic, and we're excited about it. But I explained a while ago that to Nick. Some of you heard this, that the our client, the people that hired us to do this mosaic, are wanting us to kind of keep it under wraps. They're going to have a big unveiling, but I will show you some things pretty soon. But if you drive by there, the quick lane here on College Avenue, you'll see just white with some lines, and you'll see some duct tape. But if you've driven by and looked at it, the duct tape gets higher and higher And so we're up to the sky portion of the landscape design. And so it's happening, but it's not, it doesn't come just with a snap. We worked yesterday and we just put up 5 pieces in about 6.5 to 7 hours. Pieces are, glass tile mounted in mortar on the wall and made to last as long as the building if we do it right. So anyway, it's a time-consuming thing. I'm tired. Everybody's tired. Everybody's dealing with allergies, breathing outdoors all day long. The wind's blowing. You're dealing with all this stuff, but we're here, and I'm glad to be here. Glad y'all are here. So let me put this on screen. A couple of things I want to backtrack on just a little bit, and I'm going to show you a couple of clips. Today's lecture will be a little shorter, but make sure that you leave here with the study sheet I'll give you at the end of class today. That word is pronounced giclée. A giclée is a digital print. And some people say a giclée. I heard someone say, I'm paying to have some giclées made of my work. Oh, really? Are they of your Gucci paintings? Anyway, y'all remember that lady I told you about that was doing gouache and she called it Gucci? So they're getting a giclée of their Gucci, right? All right. But the correct pronunciation, this is from the French. A giclée means really a spraying of, so it's a digital print. I suppose you could say that a digital print that you do at home on your inkjet printer could be a giclée, but this is a more high quality print. It's a more permanent print with a process that's a little more permanent than our inkjet printers can do. But if it's a digital, high quality digital print, we call it a giclée. You remember I also said that an edition, when we're talking about printmaking, is a series of prints. And I found this little note thing that I set in there, hastily scribbled on a piece of paper, that I didn't maybe focus on when we talked about printmaking. I'm going to show you, I hope to get here, I'm going to show you just a little quick printmaking thing. And I think this is kind of interesting to see. So let me see if I can play this full screen. So you see someone using a huge brayer there, and they're using a sheet of, I think a sheet of glass, and putting this ink on this very large piece of wood. Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. Hold on. There you go. Let me back up so you can see the full thing. Here we go. Yeah. So they're rolling that sticky oil-based ink onto this huge, this is a wood block, and you can find YouTube videos of these same folks doing it on linoleum, but someone's carved into that. So what type of print is this? The raised area print?
Printmaking crew.
It's a relief print, right?
Steamroller printing event. We've got Holly.
I'm sorry, let me pause this and see if I can get I'm not sure why. Sound has gotten messed with. Whoa, it's all the way up. I'm not sure what's going on there. But it's not necessary really that you hear everything. They're just introducing themselves. But you see the prints they made on cloth. Now sometimes they'll do this on paper, maybe some of those are. But you see how huge these things are? But what's really cool is, instead of using a press, they're using a steamroller. And they're rolling across this talk about high pressure of sufficient pressure to make a good print. Now you can go on YouTube and watch this, but a lot of hard work. You see these guys have ink, this oily ink all over their hands. So, and it's pretty cool to do something that large. And we're still working cooperatively in this studio to do this. They've got to have a good friend. You're seeing the back of the prints there.
Work here today.
But to have a steamroller do this instead of running it through a press and do something that large is pretty fun.
Please come next year and the following year.
Okay, so, I'm gonna stop that. Anyway, I thought you might be interested in seeing that. Let me see if I can get myself back here, where I need to be. All right, so I'm gonna get into this lesson. We finished up with photography last time, right? And so let me put this away and pull this up. You remember photography means what? Writing with what? Writing with light. Exactly. So we went into photography. Photography, the technology is amazing today, but photography is a fairly simple thing because you just have to have a way of capturing an image from life. And the early efforts were sort of groundbreaking, but using something that would be sensitive to light and capture light, and then and of course the idea was to be able to see projection of what was in the real world, and then to project it onto a surface, and the artist began tracing it and then painting from that. But to capture it on a surface that was light sensitive led eventually to the development of film, and then movies. There we go. So this chapter, the rest of chapter 8 in your text, I'm not sure, page 214 in your text, but I want to go back and talk about this because I showed you this zoetrope the other day. I showed you a flip book, right? We talked about this idea of an image staying in your brain and your eye and linking with another image. We call that the persistence of vision, right? So this phenomenon they take advantage of, and it still happens even though it's a digital process now. This goes back to Edward Muybridge, and Edward Muybridge was the groundbreaker because he even taught Edison some things. And he and Edison later linked up, but he was this eccentric genius really, because he settled a bet. There was this bet that when a horse ran, all 4 feet wouldn't come off the ground at the same time. And there were people said it's impossible. The horse would just fall down. Gravity would take it down. But Muybridge said, I'm going to prove it. And they said, well, you can't prove that. It happened so fast. So what he did by then, and this was in 1878, right after the Civil War, the shutter speeds were fast enough that he had multiple cameras along a track with string across the track. Yes.
I was just adjusting the camera, sir.
I'm sorry? Okay. Are you back on track? You there?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. But these multiple cameras every few feet with a string across the track that was connected to the shutter of each camera. And then they got the horse galloping around the track, and he came around, and as the horse broke each string, it tripped the shutter of the camera and took an instant of that motion of the horse. And so all those linked together shows that, yes, in that third frame there, and I don't know if you've ever ridden a horse when it's galloping, you feel like you're flying. You sort of are. And that horse is running, all 4 feet are off the ground at a certain point of the gallop. And so Muybridge proved that. He won the bet. He spent a lot of money trying to prove it because it was expensive to do this in the day. But I love the name of this horse, Sally Gardner, owned by Leland Stanford, ridden by G. Daum. We don't even know the full name of the jockey here. But Muybridge, I've got a book of animals that he did. He did everything from mice to elephants. And then he did a whole series of people, everything from babies crawling to old men and young people walking and running and so on to show in motion. So his breakthrough led to this idea that we take for granted motion pictures, right? And he worked with Edison, and you see he took not just one view, but multiple viewpoints, and his galloping horse experiments led to cinematography. And so if you talk about movies, that's the real word that you see sometimes. You talk about going to the cinema, you have some of these businesses named cinema something or other, but cinematography is that word that really means movies. And I'm not going to ask you about zoom and pan and so on there. But some of you have made your own movies. I mean, you've got a device here that's amazing, isn't it? It really is amazing. And I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Make sure my phone is turned off. But has the capabilities of doing that much easier than film and developing film and so on. This is in your text. You don't need to write all this down because I'm not going to ask you all this. This just talks about the angles, panning and zooming in, and a close-up and a long shot tilting the camera. We talked about the Dutch angle one time, all these different things. This is an early film, and unfortunately it's not in the text, but this is one of the first movies. It's only 14 minutes long, but it amazed people because it combined real photographs of people with this drawing and painting that this French artist had done, and a trip to the moon, which is from Jules Verne, one of the great science fiction writers. But they combine these people get on the spaceship and it goes to the moon and crashes into the man in the moon. He's not real happy about it there. But you can watch that film. A Trip to the Moon is on YouTube. You can watch that. Your text talks about this film, A Birth of a Nation. This is a 1915 publicity poster for the silent movie. Have you ever watched any silent movies? They're pretty fascinating because they have, and they're in big cities, there are these clubs, these groups of people that go and watch silent movies. And they even perform them with live music, orchestras or piano playing and so on. But this is a very controversial film. D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. They just made a remake of this. They just redid this movie a few years ago. I don't know if you heard about this. A lot of people were very upset about this. The whole idea of, the racial tensions that were happening during the Civil War was nothing new. Racial tensions have always been there. There have always been people that tried to divide people. But this was about the birth of the KKK. Now, sadly, the KKK is still alive today. But do you know how the KKK started? It started after the Civil War, and there was a group of about 6 guys that were disgruntled that the Democrats lost the election, and that Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, had given freedom, that slavery was no longer. And we need to remember that there were people trying to tear down statues of Abraham Lincoln and all these things. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He gave freedom to this country, and he wasn't a perfect man, but he sure did a lot that had not been done before. These guys were mad about it. These were Democratic leaders in the South, and they started this group called the KKK. And they went out and terrorized people, mainly minorities like black Southerners. And so that's the poster from that movie. Now the movie has a lot of, he spent a lot of money setting up these battle scenes and recreating what happened during the Civil War. Some of it's factual, a lot of it is not. Your text talks about that. But it is a famous movie because it shows a lot about what happened during the Civil War and the strife that happened there. Your text also shows some stills from this movie. Yeah, this is on page 218 in your text. I've not watched all this movie, Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin. I've not watched all of Birth of a Nation. We had to study it when I was in art class, art appreciation. This talks about a montage which is like shots blended together. This is a famous scene where this lady is killed during the Bolshevik Revolution. This is when the socialists took over in Russia. They took power away from the people that were in power, and they said, we're going to give power to the people. Well, just a small group of people got the power, and a lot of people were killed needlessly, maybe over 1 million people. But this shot by Eisenstein shows this baby carriage going down the stairs. Now, if you've ever watched Kevin Costner and Sean Connery in The Untouchables, they redo this scene, this baby carriage going down these steps. This is a famous scene. And this closes up, they do a zoom on this guy's glasses and they get shattered, and then it goes to this carriage, wheel, the baby carriage. And of course, these people coming in, the army coming in. It's a famous movie. It's a lot of horrible scenes. Go to something a little happier. Have you ever seen Charlie Chaplin? Silent movie. Chaplin's just, he's so poor here, he steams his shoe and tries to eat his shoe because that's how starved he is. So his films are a lot of fun to watch. I would recommend to you, though, if you've never seen Harold Lloyd, watch Safety Last. You can see it on YouTube. It's great. Harold Lloyd did almost all of his stunts. He blew his hand, part of his hand off, and even in this, he's wearing a prosthetic glove to hold on. He was an amazing guy, and some of the things he does, it's still studied today, and Buster Keaton is too. He broke his back twice doing his own stunts and survived it and wasn't paralyzed, thank goodness, but he did. In this scene, this is about the Civil War too. This guy's trying to stop this train, and I won't tell you too much about it, but you see him on the top of that train. That train is running, and he's running it, and he gets off the train and runs back and forth, then jumps back on the train while the train is moving, and he really did that. So even though it's a silent film, there's nothing boring about it. We talked about The Grapes of Wrath the other day. John Ford did a great job of capturing the essence of John Steinbeck's great book, The Grapes of Wrath. But these classic movies like this, your authors have included Orson Welles in there, page 216, a little profile about him. Groundbreaking filmmaker. And it talks about using flashbacks in movies. He did this whole thing, and at the beginning of this movie, have any of you seen Citizen Kane besides me? Yes? Did you like it? Have you seen the whole thing?
Not the whole thing, I did.
Okay, all right. But it starts out, and you see this scene with Rosebud, right? And then the Rosebud becomes this thing. Now, I'll talk about this in a moment, but, well, let me just say this. There's a thing called, and Alfred Hitchcock will talk about, your author talks about Hitchcock. Let me see if I can get this on screen here. Hitchcock made up this thing called the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is really what is it's the plot device. It's the thing that drives the movie. It's the thing that we wonder about and keeps our attention throughout the movie. And Hitchcock said there's really no name for this, so he and his fellow filmmakers said, let's call it the MacGuffin. We'll just make up this name. So the MacGuffin in Citizen Kane is Rosebud. And y'all know, what's the MacGuffin in Lord of the Rings? my precious, right? It's the ring. It's the thing that drives the whole series. To recover the ring, to destroy the ring. So when you talk about movies, you have to know what the plot device is. A movie has to have a conflict, right? It has to have a resolution. It has to have something that keeps the movie going forward and keeps our interest. So when you think about the MacGuffin in Citizen Kane, the MacGuffin is Rosebud. I won't spoil it for you. This sort of tells you right there, but you'll see. And Citizen Kane is basically the story of William Randolph Hearst, this American publisher who became very wealthy, built Hearst Castle, and was very corrupt. And so you see Orson Welles as Citizen Kane, going through this whole rise to power, and power didn't make him happy. It was Rosebud that made him happy in the end. He longed for Rosebud, but I won't tell you what Rosebud was. Look at the Dutch angle there. In Citizen Kane, Orson Welles did this amazing series of flashbacks and montages, and it's one of the best American films, I think. And of course, you can't go without, your text doesn't talk about The Wizard of Oz. Why is The Wizard of Oz famous? Well, it's a fun story. It's a great series of books by Frank Baum, but they did this first full-length color movie. And you're in Kansas, the tornado comes, and Dorothy's sat down and opens her eyes, and everything's in color. She ain't in Kansas anymore. But this was groundbreaking. In 1939, when people needed something amazing to think about instead of World War on the horizon and so on, musicals, Singing in the Rain, these great musicals like this. Your text talks about Bridge of Spies and Steven Spielberg and sound. Do y'all know what Foley is? Bless you. Bless you. Tissue? Tissue? Okay. You know what? Pardon? Foley is the sound of the movie. It's the crackling, crinkling of paper. It's the bird sounds in the distance and the roar of traffic or whatever. It's all the sound. And people get Academy Awards for the sound, the Foley. The Foley artists are the people, they don't record people walking usually. Sometimes they do have a boom camera, a mic that records that. But a lot of times they'll go back in and sweeten the sound, and they'll be watching the film. There'll be people that have shoes, and they'll be making the footsteps. And so all those sounds, Foley is a very important part of it. Talk about different film genres. We're in October, right? So Halloween and all these. I don't watch creepy movies. I've seen Psycho. I saw it when I was a kid. Scared the pants off me. Pardon? No, I don't watch those movies. I really don't. And they've cut off the last part of Hitchcock's name. Alfred Hitchcock was a groundbreaking filmmaker. But the scenes in this, I'm not going to say watch Psycho, but if you ever see it, the way he cuts from one thing to the other is masterful. I prefer North by Northwest. Not any blood or anything in that. This is a great film. Cary Grant's running from the spray plane. It's in color. This is just a black and white still from it. But he becomes the victim in this because someone chose his name, and he doesn't have anything to do with this big spy ring and so on. But I do recommend you watch North by Northwest. It's one of the best Hitchcock films. Previous text had this about The Artist in there, 2011, which is a remake in black and white of like the old movie look. Some of you have seen Slumdog Millionaire. It's a great movie. I've donated to the effort to help these people in the slums in India, my wife and I. But Danny Boyle did a great job with this movie. Now, they talk about this, I'm not gonna ask you that term there, but to be put in the scene. But look at this. This is the setup, a still that was taken of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. I don't know if you've ever seen Gone with the Wind. I've seen it widescreen in a theater with good sound. It's an amazing film. And they set this all up to show what this was like. But they burned Atlanta. Now, when the war was at an end, all these Union soldiers were commanded to go in, and they marched to the sea through the South, and they started by burning Atlanta. They heated up railroad tracks, they tore up their railroads, bent them around trees, so it killed the tree. They did all these things, but they were gonna only do this set one time and burn it down to the ground as a scene in Gone with the Wind. So they had to storyboard it. And this is the planning stage, and people still do storyboards today for movies. Because it's a way of saying, okay, this is what the scene's gonna look like. It's gonna be this wide panorama, and we're gonna set this up. And they had to really plan a great deal because they couldn't do it again. They were only gonna burn it one time. And that's a scene from the burning of Atlanta. Very dramatic part of the movie. Your text talks about the girl in the river, talking about how, this is on page 220, how film can change things. I talked to you about before how photographs change things. This talks about this horrible thing that still happens. It says that maybe 1,000 daughters, sisters, and wives are murdered in Pakistan every year alone, just in Pakistan, because of the belief that they've dishonored their family, marrying out of the families. Well, I've known people from India and Pakistan and so on. They said, I didn't marry someone who my family wanted me to marry. It was set up from the time I was a little girl for me to marry this person, and I didn't marry them, so I'm sort of an outcast to my family. But here, this is a documentary sort of movie to show this girl who dodged the bullet at the last split second and was thrown in the river. She wasn't killed, thank goodness. But because of this, in 2016, Pakistan passed a law that required prison sentences for people who did these crimes. That didn't stop it, but it helped because of movies like this. So movies are life-changing. This talks, I'm not going to ask you these, but you can kind of put movies in these categories. A narrative is just telling a story. Experimental movies, scripted movies, documentaries. I don't know if any of you like documentaries or not. Any of you know Ken Burns? His documentaries of like the Civil War. You can watch that. It's amazing. And there's even an effect on some movie, like on iMovie, I think they have the Ken Burns effect, so it does the pan and scan on a photograph. His documentary of country music was great. He just did one of Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. Live action, animated, one of my big favorites, different genres of film. Animation, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs took about 4 years to make. It was the very first full length. That means, how long is a movie usually, y'all know? Hour and a half. 90 minutes usually. Now some are longer, and some are broken up into 3 parts, the trilogy, like the Lord of the Rings. But this was the first 90-minute full-length movie that was in color, that was an animation, and it won the Academy Award. It's still noteworthy. If you've never seen it, find it, watch it. It's great. And thousands of people worked for nearly 4 years to make this movie. It was groundbreaking. Great story. And of course, Disney Studios did Pinocchio and Fantasia. Watch those if you haven't seen them. Folks like the Pixar Studios and Brad Bird did The Incredibles. I kept waiting for them to finally do Incredibles 2. Your text has that on page 223. I didn't see Incredibles 2 in 3D. Did y'all? Anybody see it 3D? It was cool. That's what I've heard. I chose not to see it in 3D. Sometimes 3D gives me vertigo. Is there anybody else that bothered? Yeah, sometimes. I don't know. Anyway, a great film, Elastigirl there. And of course, things like this from Pixar Studios. Some are good and some are bad. I loved Hotel Transylvania. I didn't like Transylvania University quite as much. But this guy, Gendy Tartakovsky, did this film. He's the director, just like Chuck Jones was the director for all the Looney Tunes. And look what he's doing there. He's storyboarding. He's doing the look of the characters, because the director has to do that. So he said, I grew up watching all those old Chuck Jones and Tex Avery movies and so on. So he said, it was my dream to get to make these movies. And he said, I'm not working. I'm having lots of fun making these great movies. Now, do y'all know this term? Write this term down. Film noir. I've heard people say it's pronounced film noir, but film noir, the R is in there. You've seen film noir, and it's one of my favorite types of films, the old movies, but they make new movies there. But look at this lighting. It's very dramatic lighting. You remember tenebrism we talked about? It's sort of tenebrism, right? It's like the scene is very dark, and it might be foggy or smoky or whatever, but there's just something about these old film noirs, especially the black and white. Now, you can do color, but black and white really works better for film noir. And the term means black film. Noir is black. So it's a dark setting. It's a dark scene. And you might have a little spotlight or highlight or backlighting to make it very much more dramatic. My favorite, the top of my list for film noir is this, The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart. Watch that one. I recommend it. By the way, the MacGuffin is The Maltese Falcon. Everybody's trying to get their hand on it. Our fellow Texan, Robert Rodriguez, and Frank Miller teamed up to do Frank Miller's film of his graphic novel, Sin City. Some parts of that I wouldn't recommend to you, but you've probably seen it. But this is film noir. Frank Miller's novel, his graphic novel, his drawings and everything harken back to film noir scenes. And so this film, when he and Robert Rodriguez teamed up to do it, it's film noir. And some of you are familiar with these Japanese movies, anime, and you can watch that. This is interesting to me because of the technology that we have. I never thought they'd be able to film. And they did an animation of Lord of the Rings, that Ralph Bakshi did that. It's pretty good. But when Peter Jackson had the technology to put motion capture cameras on, by the way, Andy Serkis won an Academy Award for his role as Gollum. They put these motion capture cameras on him, and he's crawling around and doing all this, which they then translated to the character of Gollum, who's totally irredeemable. He sold his soul for the ring, right? But technology is amazing. I don't recommend you watch Dr. Caligari. It's too dark for me. Done in 1919. It's a silent film. It's wicked stuff. The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman is all in. There's subtitles in English. This is based on Revelation, the Seventh Seal that's undone, but it's a very dark kind of film too. This is the first image that was published on the World Wide Web, and we think of technology as being, something we take for granted, but this is just the first thing that was sent on the World Wide Web that was an image. And that was in 1992. This is the first image sent on a cell phone, 1997. We do it all the time, right? But this guy he spent a lot of money and a lot of hours figuring out how to take his cell phone in 1997, doesn't seem that long ago, to take a picture of his daughter and send it to his relatives. And he had to patch together all kinds of things with computer and all. Now we just click and, airdrop it or, message it, email it to our family. But even though that's kind of a sort of a pixelated image, that's pretty groundbreaking right there. Of course, we take for granted things like CGI. I think sometimes CGI is overdone, but I'm glad we have it. Computer-generated images. You have this in the text. It talks about different experiments people have done. These television sets set up in 1986, and video disc players to show these images there. And then more modern experiments using videos of different things, and they're interactive. But people have been doing it as long as there's been video. People have been experimenting with it. Now, I'm not going to ask you any of those things on there. We have some time, and so I want to show you a sort of a montage film that I found that puts all these styles together. And this guy, the text talks about this film, and I didn't put this in there, La La Land. Some of you have seen that. But if I type right, I'm not square with my keyboard like my teacher always said. But this is shot by the director of that. I thought I had it in here. Sorry. But it didn't pop up like I wanted it to. Let's see if this will show it. I wanted to show you this because this is sort of a combination of all the different genres by Damien Chazelle. I think it's kind of entertaining. Sound is all the way up. I don't know what the problem is here. This is all shot on the iPhone in vertical. That's the camera crew down there. And there we are, back to film. Homage to Buster Keaton in silent films. The unsung fall guy. So he goes through all these different genres. This is a little bit film noir. The old adventure. The eagle. And remember, this is all shot on an iPhone.
Alright, good. Instead of double, you're gonna have to pull harder. Let's go again.
To the musical now. That guy's pretty amazing. Now this all links together if you pay attention.
Here we go, everybody.
You'll find out.
Moment. What we've all been waiting for, right? So we'll take your profile, your face with the toward camera.
Zoom in. A little bit of north on northwest.
Good, keep running. Not feeling the fear, more fear.
More.
Okay, fire. There's another alien. Fear for your life. Okay, keep running. They're after you. They're about to get to you. Give it to me in the eye. And cut.
Cutting. Let's make sure with the kids.
She put his jacket on to see what else she put on him.
I think they're ready for you. Oh, hey. I'll see you then.
Here we are back. Happy ending. So this is called Vertical Cinema on iPhone 11 Pro. And Damien Chazelle. Now, I'm going to show you this real quick. Let me stop this and go back here one. And I want to show you just a little bit of this. This is how they made this. He talks about this. I think this
My
is
name
kind
is
of
Damien
interesting.
Chazelle, and I'm the director on Vertical Cinema. Part of the fun of this is to try to think purely in terms of the vertical aspect ratio and what that does. Just think back to when I was a kid, playing with much less sophisticated technologies than the phone, little VHS camcorders or things like that, and just trying to do my version of Hollywood movies with what I had. I use the iPhone all the time, so it was sort of getting to know in a deeper way a camera that I thought I knew so intimately. We would constantly sort of realize things that it could do that we didn't know it could do, and to think about how you can do stuff beyond just pulling it out of your pocket and shooting.
See, they've got like a little matte painting on glass there.
Okay, go ahead and open the walls up, please, open the walls. We've got these marked, the walls?
They're hardware. There's the accessibility of the phone that hopefully, a little movie like this throws out a few ideas out there that people could then play with literally on their own or at home or in their backyards. The spirit of it, of trying to just throw things at the wall and see what sticks, not just with stories or what the content on screen is, but how you capture it and what the form is.
You're thinking about how things are moving in an elongated fashion, right? You're not thinking about lamps.
Anyway, I thought you'd be interested in seeing that since we're talking about film, because there are all kinds of apps. We have one that I purchased for, I don't know, a couple of dollars called 8mm. Have y'all ever seen that? And it has a film noir part to it, and it's kind of fun to play around with those different things. So the technology is pretty amazing. I mean, anybody can be a filmmaker. If you have a movie editing thing like iMovie or whatever, it's fun. So, questions about anything that we've covered so far? Yes.
Yes, it's Judy.
Hi, Judy.
I didn't know if you had forgotten about the review or not.
I sent it. You have it?
Yes.
I'm going to give it to everyone right now. So y'all have a good
Okay,
weekend
thank-
to study. We'll go over things on Tuesday, and then we'll take the test then.
Thank
And
you.
be working on your Chihuly. Thank you.